data economy that funds much of the internet, everything you do gets translated into data and sold on to the highest bidder. Thousands of corporations and governments around the world know who you are, what you do, where you live. They know who your family is, who your friends are. They know what you eat, how much you weigh, how much you drink, how do you drive. They know who you sleep next to, whether you're having an affair. They know about your sexual practices, your political tendencies, your diseases. They know what you hope for, what you fear, what you desire, what tempts you, where you hurt. And all these incredibly sensitive data gets compiled and sold to almost anyone who wants to buy it. And it turns out there's a lot of people who want to buy it. And most of them don't have your best interest at heart. It's a perverse system, and we need to stop it. It might sound radical, this idea to end the data economy, given how used to it we've become. But what's really radical, what's extreme, is to have a business model that depends on the systematic and mass violation of the right to privacy. That's what's radical, and it needs to stop. Privacy matters because the lack of it gives others power over you. The more other people know about you, the more they can influence your behavior, try to interfere with your life, predict what you're going to do next, and try to stop it. You and I are not being treated as equal citizens. We are being treated on the basis of our data. How much you pay for the same service, how long you wait when you call customer service, and the kind of publicity you have access to all depends on your data. If you are a man, you probably get ads for higher paying jobs than women. And this is undermining equality. It's undermining equality of opportunity, and it's undermining the trust and the fabric of society. Potentially hundreds of algorithms are making decisions about you right now, and you have no idea about it. You don't have access to that data, and you have no way to correct data that might be inaccurate about you. You might be denied a loan, a job, an apartment, and all this on the basis of data that is inaccessible to you. It's unfair, and it's dangerous. One of the most common misconceptions about privacy is that it's something individual, something of a personal preference. But in fact, privacy is first and foremost a collective endeavor and a political concern. Having so much data getting collected and stored indefinitely is a ticking bomb. It's just a matter of time before things go sour. Just like we knew for decades that a pandemic was coming, we know that a massive cyber attack is coming. It's just a matter of time before it's successful. And if a foreign country could get their hands on that personal data, we would be extremely vulnerable to them. We should learn from the lessons of history. One of the examples that shows just how dangerous personal data is and just how dangerous our system is comes from the Second World War. One of the first things that the Nazis did when they invaded a city was go to the registry, because that's where the data was held. And they needed to get to the data to find Jews. There's a study that compares the country in Europe that had the most data on its citizens, which was the Netherlands, against the country in Europe that had the least data on its citizens, which was France. In the Netherlands, the government had implemented a system that wanted to follow people from cradle to grave. In France, they had made a conscious decision for privacy reasons not to collect certain kinds of data, for instance, related to religious affiliation. The difference is stark. In the Netherlands, the Nazis found and killed about 73% of the Jewish population. In France, 25%. The difference is in the hundreds of thousands of people. And there are a few stories that illustrate particularly well the importance of not collecting certain kinds of data. In France, the General Comptoir of the army, a man called René Carmi, volunteered and offered to the Nazis that he would do a census and collect all that data that they wanted and needed. He was one of the few people who had punch card machines, IBM Hollerith machines, and that could do that. Months went by, and he didn't give the data to the Nazis. So the Nazis started raiding people, but they were very inefficient. Even more months went by, and the data was nowhere to be seen. In fact, René Carmille had never planned to give that data to the Nazis. He never collected it in the first place. And by that one act of one person deciding not to collect sensitive information, he saved hundreds of thousands of people. In contrast, in Amsterdam, there was an attempt to save people that was not very successful. A resistance cell in 1943 decided to try to destroy the records in the registry. They went in, they sedated the guards, they set fire to the files, and they had a deal with the fire department that they would arrive late and that they would use more water than needed to destroy as many records as possible. Unfortunately, they were quite unsuccessful. They only managed to destroy about 15% of records, and the Nazis found and killed 70,000 Jews in Amsterdam. The Dutch had made two mistakes. First, they collected a lot more data than was needed. And second, they didn't have an easy way to delete data in the event of an emergency. We are making both of those mistakes at a grand scale never seen before. Even though some positive steps have been taken and we have new legislation to deal with privacy, for instance in Europe, the GDPR, it's not enough. It's not enough because every day we see new privacy scandals, because too much personal data is being collected, and because most of the burden is shouldered by individuals. It shouldn't be up to us to say no all the time to data collection. The default matters, and the default should be no personal data collection. In order to protect justice and fairness and equality and democracy, we need to regulate tech. We need to make sure that the algorithms that are judging us have passed randomized control trials and are trustworthy. We need to make sure that we know what algorithms are judging us and on the basis of what data. We need to be in control. Generations before us have all managed to regulate the big industries of their time, from railways to cars to airplanes to food to drugs. There's no reason why we won't be able to regulate tech. It's our time. It's a task of our generation. For the power that our governments wield to be legitimate, it has to stem from our consent, not from our data. There is a very close link between surveillance and authoritarianism, and we need to start moving away from bulk data collection if we want to protect our democracies. In the digital age, whoever has the data will have the power. If we give too much of our personal data to companies, it shouldn't surprise us that we have to endure some kind of plutocracy in which the rich write the rules of the game. If we give too much of our personal data to governments, we risk sliding into authoritarianism. For democracy to be strong, the bulk of the power needs to be with the people, and that means that the citizenry has to have control of personal data. At the end of the day, we need governments to regulate data, but there's much you can do to help that happen. Choose privacy-friendly products. Instead of using Google, use DuckDuckGo. Instead of using WhatsApp, use Signal. Instead of using Gmail, use ProtonMail. There are always alternatives, and you'd be surprised how much it matters what you choose. Companies are listening, and we need to teach them that we care about privacy, that we are not consenting to data collection, and that if they're smart enough, they will have a business model that doesn't depend on exploiting personal data, and that harnesses the power of privacy as a competitive advantage. Governments are also listening. Contact your political representatives. Tell them that you're worried about privacy. Ask them what they're doing about it. At the end of the day, big tech depends on us. They are nothing without our data. They depend on our collaboration and our cooperation. Do not accept a system that violates your rights. We shouldn't get used to it, and it's too dangerous for national security. Refuse the unacceptable.